Hey, Ricky, thanks for being here, buddy.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me on.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
Yep, appreciate it. We were talking to you, and you are coming from the state of Texas,
That's correct.
and you had a couple strange encounters, experiences there.
That is very correct.
Um, if you want to tell us just a brief about yourself before you get into it, and then you can talk about what you saw and what happened to you.
Well, to summarize, I've been pretty much helping landowners with cattle for a number of years, and it's got me into the position where I'm at right now. And so I help these landowners and do a lot of horseback work, that type of stuff. Spend a lot of time outdoors, see a lot of different areas. Got several different regions here, creek bottoms, hilltops, all that kind of good stuff that I get to use as my office on a regular basis. And to get to where the first encounter was, the first experience, what led me there that day was we had sold a bunch of cattle off of a property back January of that year, and pretty much the land sat dormant. And we decided to go ahead and purchase some more cattle and turn out on that place. But in that amount of time from January to about April or May, the grass had grown up and seasons changed. So we had a lot of dead vegetation, a lot of dry vegetation. So I decided I wasn't going to drive my pickup around with the chance of starting a fire, anything like that. So I decided to ride horseback to check the fence lines out. And so I had gotten horseback and took off, and, really didn't have anything in mind, or, a thought of anything happening. It was just a normal day, took some pliers, took some wire, the best I could to, horseback and take care of that situation that I might encounter, whether it's a broke wire or any kind of situation. But anyway, so we were riding along there, and probably 20-30 minutes in, of course, the fence line was to my left-hand side. And so I was watching that as I was walking down and just kind of looking around, observing. And all of a sudden, that horse of mine came to a complete stop and just turned his head to the right, just real quickly. And I was like, well, that's very strange. He's a seasoned horse. He was probably in 2019. I'm thinking that was the year that it should have been the year that the first encounter happened. He should have been about 10 years old at the time, and seen a lot of land, seen a lot of different experiences, and didn't spook very well. He's very easygoing, but when he turned to the right and stopped, I could feel all his muscles just tensing up underneath me, and so I immediately looked over there in that area, and that's when I had the first experience with what I'm going to call Dogman. And it was very detailed. It wasn't really a scary experience. Neither the horse didn't spook. He just kind of stopped and tensed up. And of course, I didn't even really understand what I was actually looking at. I think I spent a few seconds trying to break down what I'm actually seeing. I've seen coyotes before. Things like that. We don't have many white-tailed deer or anything in that area uh, on that particular tract of land. So it just seemed like a little bit of time there was me processing what I seen and really trying to figure out what my next course of action might be. What I do now that I've seen this, what I do with it, or where do I go, or what's going to happen? Is the horse going to run off, leave me stranded? And really not stranded. I think the acreage is roughly about 250 acres on this tract of land. And so I wasn't too worried about not being able to get back to the truck or anything like that, being lost for days. But you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things going through your mind when you see something that you don't understand. And so, I don't exactly know how much time that I experienced with him. It was enough to gather details on what I was actually looking at and what he was actually looking at. uh, enough to distinguish different features that I haven't seen before, and I can kind of go into some of those details of what it looked like if you
Yeah, go
want.
ahead.
So
Absolutely.
basically, and I had told Todd that I sketched a photo or sketched a picture of what I seen when I got home that evening and was telling my wife and uh, son at the time the story. But I haven't been able to find that here in the last couple of days. We're going to keep looking for that. I don't. It's stowed away in a book somewhere. Uh,
Yeah, if
but
you can find that, can you send that to us? Email it to us?
I will. I will. I'll try to put a
Okay.
little more effort into it. And life changed. I think we've actually moved since then uh, to another house, so I don't know if it kind of got lost in the shuffle or whatnot. But basically, I was looking at a coyote head with shoulders. Uh, you know, they weren't. If you look at a coyote, they're pretty much streamlined. It's whatever their head can fit in, their body can fit in. They lead with their head, and if they go in a hole, they're going to be able to pass their body. Well, this one had shoulders kind of like a football player. I mean, they were just broad as mine. Uh, but and then had dangling arms, or their arms dangled to the side just like we would do, and gave it really that manly feature compared to what a coyote would look like. And it seemed that he had paws. He didn't have opposable thumbs or anything like that, but he just had paws hanging there. And I thought, this is the strangest thing I've ever seen. uh and you've seen the face of a coyote, but what really stuck out to me was and I'm looking at this thing, what I'm estimating now, thinking back, probably about 20 yards away. But what's stuck out to me was his eyes. If a coyote has pupils like a dog, and variation, they have white on the outside, and then, their eye color and pupil and etc. But the eye feature is what really caught me off guard, because if you look at a white-tailed deer, uh, you notice their eyes are just completely black or brown. You don't see any pupils or any kind of outlining. It's just deep dark color, and that's what his eyes look like uh, from my point of view. And you know, kind of, I don't know why those eyes look like that. They weren't glowing red, they weren't green, they weren't nothing. It was just like a really dark uh, eye of a deer. I mean, that's the best resemblance I could get. And they were I want to try to, they were kind of elongated, they were real wide. They're wider than they were taller, but no apparent eyelids or nothing like that. And it just looked like I was looking right through his eyes. I don't know if that, um, how to describe that feeling. But, when you look at a person, or, a dog in the eyes or whatever, you're looking at uh, their pupils and cornea and whatnot. And this just seemed like I was looking right through it, and he was looking right through me. But I gathered all those details. That the hide was just like that of a lightish tannish brown color. There was really no distinct colors. There was no white patch on their throat or anything like that. Uh, no really variations in color on the skin or on the fur. Um, just kind of like a tannish brown color. So, uh, we sat there and kind of looked at each other, and I think the thought I had was, you know, I respect your space if you can respect mine. That was my barrier. I probably just said it in my head. I just, because I am used to the paranormal. I've done some stuff with paranormal in the past and had some really awesome experiences with that. And, I think I was just kind of creating my bubble as we were sitting there looking. That was my thought at the time, toward the end of our experience. Just basically, I respect your space, you respect mine, and let's move forward. And it was really crazy because I kind of felt like the horse relaxed during this process of us staring down each other, trying to figure each other out. The horse was relaxed, and I kind of looked away a little bit, and by the time I looked back, I felt like he just kind of turned around and moved off at a fairly fast pace. You know, it was just like he was gone with the wind. I mean, and it wasn't like there was, you know, the crazy thing was I had to actually go investigate, you know, what was standing there. Was there a paw print? Was there matted down grass? Because there hadn't been any livestock in that area for some good time. You know, there might have been some coyotes bedded down or things like that here and there, matting down the grass. But like I said, there's really no wild game out there to speak of in that area other than, you know, dogs and coyotes. But I didn't see anything particular in the grass. I didn't see any paw prints. It was like he didn't leave any kind of footprint at all. Um, if that's understandable. Um, so, you know, with that experience, uh, I honestly didn't feel scared about it. Uh, I didn't really give much thought of it. You know, I really didn't know what to process out of it. You know what I'm saying? When you see something like that, that's out of character, that didn't fit anything you've experienced in the past. I don't think reality set in because I had a job at the time. I had a task at hand that I was trying to accomplish. And I was thinking this was probably going to be somewhere around the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock hour, you know, and time's ticking. I had a lot of ground to cover. So I pretty much just went on with, with my task and completed that. And I don't think it really set in until I got home what I had actually experienced, and that's what led me to sketching that. Because I was like, if I don't sketch this now, I may never be able to recall what that was, and I wanted to get it on paper just to kind of give me validation of exactly what I had experienced, seen, saw, um, you know, and I feel like it's pretty much engraved in my head what that is, and I probably could sit down and sketch that again if I had to, just because of the detail. But I didn't understand why he had such broad shoulders. You know, that's what I couldn't figure it out. You know, it's the broad shoulders and then just the skinny little limbs hanging there to the side, which never actually really moved until I felt like he moved off. And I think he actually moved off bipedal. You know, he didn't go back down on all fours. I think it was left in on two. And the reason I say that, the grass, kind of like what I described it, it had some growth to it. I'm going to say it was probably 2 to 2.5 feet tall at the time of dead vegetation, or, you know, seasoned out vegetation. And I'm going to say this creature was probably another 2 to 2.5 feet taller than the grass, you know, just double in size. And so that'll give you a height reference, maybe somewhere 4.5 feet to 5 to 5.5 feet, somewhere in there in height. Um, I don't know how that lines up with other experiences people have had. I haven't heard of any other experiences. I've just heard of the tales of it, you know, of a dog man. But I do believe he moved off on two legs, and that was that experience. Uh, any questions y'all may have, or
I think down in Texas, down in that area, even with the Sasquatch stories that we've heard, everything seems to be smaller.
Hmm.
Like, you know, if you go up to Washington, you got the 10 to 12 foot Bigfoot, but in Texas and Florida and the southern states, they're a little smaller.
a little
So
small.
that would make sense.
Yes, sir. So I mean, the area that we're in, you know, everything grows kind of compatible. It scales with what's underneath them, and you know that might have something to do with it. You know, we don't grow real tall grasses. The part of Texas I'm in, there's a lot of improved grasses like your coastal Bermudas, et cetera. And, you know, they're kind of like a foot tall, maybe a foot and a half at the max. But um, so, you know, when you get if that creature is eating something, I guess you would have to have something to support it. Or if it's more on a paranormal cryptid type deal, like I guess they would feed off of our energy. It would be, I really don't know how to explain it, but you know, if you had a live creature, you'd have to have something underneath it to support that. So maybe the area that we're in wouldn't support something that large. It would have to be at the scale that I'm talking about. Um, so That was that encounter.
See, that's interesting to me, Ricky. Excuse me. It is interesting to me. And Brian, you made that comment about how things are different in different states. And we know that Bigfoot are different. Maybe dogmen are different too. Maybe this is a different version of one we really haven't heard of yet, a coyote looking one. And it could have been a juvenile, right? It could have been a small one, not fully grown as well. Did it have a tail, Ricky? Did you notice a tail?
Honestly, I did not notice a tail. Uh, it's kind of strange. You would look for features that would say feminine or masculine, and I really couldn't honestly, say whether it was feminine or masculine. But I felt like it was more. You said juvenile. That's kind of a good word because I think that with our experience, I was trying to figure out what he was doing there, and he was doing the same. What are you doing here? And on this particular tract of land, the property owner doesn't live on that site. Um, I have a goal. I've been out there now for 14 years, and I try to have a general rule of checking up on the livestock out there every 7 to 10 days. But we just went through 4 or 5 months of no livestock out there, so you know there was probably minimal traffic at that on that track for some amount of time. Wintertime, a lot of people don't get out. The landowner might not have been out there much. And then we come in there one day, pulled all the cattle off the land, um, and then just let it sit there until we got ready to, restock it. So, juvenile to me kind of makes sense. Not trying to make things fit, but as we're talking about it, um, you know, kind of like a seasoned buck, you're not going to see that 6, 7 year old buck all the time. He's going to stay hidden out until other things draw him out. It felt like this was more of a playful manner because I honestly don't think he was on a mission, and he didn't really have uh, anything in mind. Like he didn't know how to react to me, and I didn't know how to react to him. The second experience, I think, really was more a target, um, and we can go into that whenever we get there. First experience, casual, uh, casual, setting, etc. Maybe more juvenile, like you're saying. So that may make sense.
How long did that first experience last?
Do what now?
How long did that last, that first experience? 10 minutes, 15
Oh,
minutes?
it's hard to judge. If you ever, just like working with the paranormal, sometimes time flies and, you don't even realize it, or you may think, oh, this, uh,
Right.
account might be more pressured, might last, it may be 20 seconds, but you feel like it lasts 10 minutes. You just want out of that situation. If I had to guess, I'm thinking the experience probably lasts maybe 2 minutes at the most. I mean, it was really short, but uh, it was there. It's that might be even stretching it,
Okay.
just to be honest.
Did you say it had paws or hands?
I believe it had paws. I really believe it had paws. I didn't. That's why I was saying I didn't feel like it had opposable thumbs or anything like that. It just looked like wide shoulders, like a man would have, and then it just had these little, you know, dangling arms. And I don't recall seeing any movement. I don't know whether they move backwards or come forward like ours. But it seemed like there was some movement to those arms when he moved off. But it just wasn't a detail that I 100% remember that I could, say, hey, this is exactly what it is. But little to no movement in the arms. And honestly, other than him moving off, when he showed up, he was there. When the horse alerted me to him, he was already in that position, and there was pretty much just a stare down. It wasn't very much movement. Uh, Probably from the both of us. I mean, until the point that I said, hey, I've got to, get a reality check, look off and look back and make sure we're seeing exactly what we're seeing. Um, so little movement until he moved off. So honestly, like tail, um, genitalia, anything like that, I really couldn't see. Could be because of the grass cover that was there, that wasn't exposed. I honestly didn't see the lower limbs probably until he was moving off, and I really didn't get that detail. It was just a fast-paced movement, and it was out of there. And like I said, there's scattered mesquite trees through there, plus tall vegetation. So I feel that, some of that might have been really hard to see. And he could have moved 10, 20 yards and disappeared into the growth with no problem at that point in time. You go out there today, it's a little bit different. It's growed down. We actually done a prescribed burn out there on that property. So we don't, the vegetation isn't as high as it was at that point across the ranch there um, right now. So if I would have seen that today in daylight, maybe so. Maybe I could have told you a little more details about the lower extremities and how that movement worked. But I think with the growth that we had at the time, uh, I was glad to get the detail that I have today.
Did he open his mouth? Did you notice any teeth or anything?
It seems to me that the mouth was closed. It was just basically a dead-on look. He did have the snout, black snout, those really bold black eyes that looked really deep. Um, like I said, no, coyotes, they have different features. Some of them have white patches. Some of them have a white lining around their mouth. This one had absolutely no really color distinctions. And, but no, I didn't see no teeth. The nose looked like that of a coyote or of a dog. I guess you would say canine, because I keep referencing coyote because I really don't have nothing else to describe it as. But we'll just call it canine. He really had a canine look. Had a really round, uh, bold head. It wasn't like a skinny head. It was really pronounced. And then if I'm trying to reference what my drawing looked like, it just kind of looked like his head tucked right down on his shoulders. It wasn't like a long, stretched out neck. It was just kind of set down on there. And, really intimidating. If somebody would have seen it and really didn't know how to react, like I said, I kind of have a little bit of conditioning on the paranormal side. So I was kind of used to dealing with things that you don't understand sometimes. But really, like I said, uh, could have mistaken it for a linebacker or like a football player with big, broad shoulders, and a big head. So the ears were erect, the ears were standing up. Uh, that was really a detail. And I don't know, most of the time dogs, when they're looking and listening and trying to figure things out, those ears twitch, uh, or they'll move around trying to figure out where sound's coming from. I just remember the ears staying still, the head staying still. Everything was just really, head on. I never really got a side profile. Even when he moved off, I would have thought I might have caught a side profile, but I just don't recall that part of it.
All right. Ricky, why don't you tell us about, well, first of all, what year did that happen in? Did you say?
I, I'm going to call it 2019 is when that first experience. I'm just thinking back on uh, the way we, uh, managed the cattle, and I'm thinking we sold those cattle off of there January of 2019. So this would have been somewhere around. I'm going to call it late April to May timeframe. Maybe at the latest early June, because that time frame would fit the end of the cool season grasses, and that's what the dead vegetation would have been, is those cool season grasses. So it had to be at the end of spring, first of summer, when I had that experience. If I'd have known I was going to do a podcast on it, um, gives me really good insight. Next time I do a sketch, I'm going to put a date on it. That way I can reference that. So I learned something uh, by getting with you guys on this. Hey, let's make some hard detail references or some hard points that we can reference later on, because honestly, I never thought I'd have another experience with him. I thought maybe that was a one-time thing and done. Um, but I had that second experience just here probably in the last few weeks. And I was going to say I could have referenced it on my phone. I should have done that prior. I can kind of give you a hard date. I have communications that I was in with the landowner uh, the night, or actually the early morning, that led me into the second experience. So I can actually reference that, and we can reference the moon phase possibly if y'all want to do that as well, because uh, if y'all want to hear about the second experience, I can lead y'all into why I was there the second time, early morning hours. So the landowner was out there. We actually had some feral hogs move into the area uh, here in the last couple months, and the landowner was out there and he had spotted those feral hogs. And I use a thermal scope to identify hogs here at the ranch that I currently live on. And so we managed that with thermals. It's easier to hunt with them. You know, you can see them in the middle of the night. You can plan your route and how you're going to navigate that versus daytime, trying to sneak up on them, etc. But anyway, long story short, the moon was real bright the night of the landowner calling me and saying, "Hey, well, I was out there. I seen the hogs out there." And I told him, I said, "Well, if the moon wasn't so bright right now, I would actually go out there and I would try to put a stalk on them and see if we can manage those feral hogs, because once they move in and set up a population, you know, they become pretty problematic." So, you know, I really wanted to go out there that night, and I had to hold myself back. But I actually told myself, you know, when I went to bed, I said, you know what, if I wake up in the morning at some point in time, you know, and I referenced that the moon is going down, you know, and it's getting darker, and I can make a play on these hogs, I will actually go out there. And for some reason, with no alarm, I actually woke up 2:30 in the morning, and I said, "Well, I'll go ahead and give it a shot." So I think I left my house somewhere roughly around 3 o'clock. That would have put me on this property somewhere around 3:30, 3:35, and I actually have two tracts of land there, and the other tract of land is actually where the hogs were sighted um, that night before. So I went there first, you know, just try to cut them off, etc. But I went in there, I didn't have any luck. So I decided, well, while I'm out here, I'm going to go scope out what's going on the other property. Of course, we have livestock on there, but I figured the way the properties were set up, if those hogs were anywhere in the area, I would be able to identify them. And I don't know if you have any experience with thermal scopes, but you can see a long way with those things. I feel like you can see a mile in that scope at night. It'll bring that heat signature back, and you can make out details. So you can cover a pretty big radius when you go out with one of those things. So I had traveled over to the property where I had the experience with the Dogman second. So we may be looking at the 4 o'clock in the morning time frame at that point. Um, and I had went in there, and the way this property's set up, you drive in on a hilltop, you go through a little ravine, and then you come back out on another uh, hilltop on the other side. And then, but you can make a circle around the property. So you kind of basically do the same thing on the other side. You know, you just drop back off of one high point, go back down in the low, and come back up. So I pulled in the gate. I scanned as soon as I closed the gate, didn't see anything. Of course, I seen a few cows out there, seen the neighbors' cows, etc. And I just went on, and that's what I did. I would went down the ravine, I checked, then went back on the back side of the property, checked there. I didn't see nothing but the livestock that were supposed to be there, and I made my loop. Well, when I got back closer to where the gate was that I would enter and exit at, I just said, okay, I'm gonna do one more scan, and I got kind of I was driving my wife's Forerunner at the time. Uh, I just kind of opened the door, and I would stand up and look over the top, and I was on that hilltop, so I could see a lot. And I had actually picked up a heat signature that I was pretty sure was actually on, um, the neighboring property that I couldn't shoot or do anything about. But I really wanted to go over there and scope that out, and I felt like, hey, if I get over there, maybe I can make a play and push it back onto one of the other two of the properties, or one of the two properties that I was, had permission on. I was supposed to be on. So I got back in the vehicle, and I drove up onto the next hilltop. And of course, with the thermal, before I left, I always make sure, especially when I go to a distant place, I get some point of references. That way, when I get back to where I think I need to be, I can reference those in the scope, get those signatures, and then I would know exactly kind of where that area that I need to target in on, and that's what I was going to look at. So what I'd actually done was I pulled back through the bottom of that and went back onto the hilltop, and I'd pull the vehicle back to the left-hand side. That would be kind of going back toward the west, and I had seen my markers. I'd actually seen the neighbor's cattle. I had seen another barn, and I'd referenced a tree out there, but I couldn't figure out. I couldn't find that other signature, and at that point I could see a long way. And um, when I'd seen that signature, it looked like a hog, exactly what I'm looking at or looking for. And when you're looking through those scopes, they're pretty detailed, and you can kind of tell whether it's a deer, coyote. You can pick out rabbits, you can pick out skunks, even if they're at a long distance. So I was pretty sure what I was looking at and what I was going after was a feral hog. So I got back up to that point on that hilltop on the other side, and I had parked the vehicle, and I had left it running and with like the fog lamps on. They're lower down, and it doesn't shine too far. I didn't want to disturb whether it was livestock or feral hogs. I just, matter of fact, it was pretty cool that night as well. So I was like, I'm just going to leave it running. So I had walked out on foot, which I had done many times. I don't have any problem, you know, seeking out stuff like this on foot in the dark. I've done it here on this property and other properties as well. Really not scared of any situations. Pretty well aware of what's out there. But anyway, I walked out a little further and tried to get a different angle to find that what I had believed to be a feral hog on the scope. Um, but I didn't have any luck. So I was just kind of pinging back and forth from different areas or, different spots and trying to get a different angle and maybe something would show up. But I remember I was looking off to the west, kind of the same way that the car was pointing at the instant that I uh, had this second experience. So I'm standing there on that hilltop, and also I was wearing earplugs. I put earplugs in. It's a fairly high caliber gun that I shoot, and it's loud. So if I did happen to pull off a shot, I needed ear protection. So, um, and I'm kind of hesitant on saying this because it was kind of traumatic, this second experience. So I want to make sure that I stay on course with what I'm saying. I could
Take your
actually,
time. Take your time.
I could actually feel and hear something coming and rushing me. It was like, um, it was coming from the vehicle behind me, not right from the vehicle, but over to the side of the vehicle, and I had felt something rushing up on me. I mean, I just sensed it, And the crazy thing was, I had the earplugs in, but it was like the crunching noise was between the earplug and my eardrum. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't coming from outside; it was actually coming from the interior. And I thought that experience was really strange, and I knew something was going on, and you know, I immediately had this thought. I was like, uh, you respect me, kind of going back to the same thing. I was like, you respect me, I respect you, whatever it is, I can get out of your way. I can be out of here. But the feeling just kept getting closer and closer, and the noise level stayed about the same. It was just like something was coming up on me, something walking through the grass, really fast and aggressively. And this is where I've never had this experience before with anything else, but I had actually turned around to go to the vehicle at this point in time. I was like, I will get out of your space and I respect it. And when I turned around, I had realized where I actually was, and I was on the top of the same spot that I had had the first encounter. I don't know if they led me there or, with the thermal, with the whatever, but some reason I was pulled back to that very same spot, probably within, I don't even know what kind of radius, maybe 100-foot radius, but I was right there in that same area that I had that first experience. Um, and so when I turned my head, I had that experience, and I think I had that thought of that's exactly where I'm at. And honestly, this is, you know, uh, somewhat of an OBE, like outer body experience, but I had turned around and made up my mind. I was going back to that vehicle so fast that I felt like my soul moved faster than my body. And I told my wife that I was actually wearing this wool jacket that night. It's kind of plaid, it's got some square pattern. I told her I had moved back so fast, like I wanted to move to that vehicle so fast that my soul had left my body probably 6 to 8 foot away before it kind of, went so far that my body caught back up with it. But I remember being able to see the backside of my jacket and the details of that, and the clothes that I was wearing, and I honestly I couldn't process you know how that happened, and the experience and the rush that uh, experience gave me was, I don't even know how to measure it. You know what I'm saying? Uh, but it was somewhat of a different experience. Like they actually had a mission to get me out of there. It wasn't like I startled you, you startled me, or we're trying to figure each other out. It was like that rush of energy came with a purpose, and I was quick to set up boundaries. But that whole thing of me being able to see my backside in detail, and I actually remember it was like my head was turned and I could actually see the orange earplugs in the glow of the light, in my ear. That's how detailed that experience was. And I've never felt that before. I've never had that movement or uh, somewhat of an OBE in that setting with something like this. And the the details of the dog man at that point, uh, honestly, I didn't get a lot of details of what it looked like at that point. I just remember it was like a rush of energy that it could move so fast. It was like in my ears, between my earplugs and my eardrum, it was like it was right up on me. But when I turned around to look, I could see that energy and that mass moving toward me, like trying to rush me, and uh, so I didn't get a lot of details. And the only thing I just have to correlate the two. I like, okay, I've had this experience here. This had to be what it was. And honestly, the mass at this point, with it that being that close, it felt like it was, somewhat of my height and possibly to double the width, 2 to 4 foot wide. And I don't know if that's the energy that it was transferring and bringing with it. Um, but it was a total different experience. It wasn't a very pleasant one. And I just remember just thinking like, just let me get back to the vehicle. I will get out your way. I have no business here. I understand. I don't know what brought me, or, why did they bring me back to that place? Because I felt like I was actually led back with the thermal scope, because I've already scanned that area once. I had actually looped back around and got drawn back to that particular area. And for some reason, without thinking, I was just on a mission. I parked that vehicle right there in that same spot and kind of walked out and, pinged different points and looked around. Um, but just the experience of having um, that rush of energy, and then also me being able to tell you what my backside looked like, bringing out details of that jacket, uh, somewhat of that, what I'm going to call an OBE, that was mind boggling. It took me a long time to actually settle down from that. I don't, I actually had to go back to the vehicle, and I just kind of sat in there with the doors locked for just a second. I don't know how long it was, but I just remember saying, okay, I'm back in the vehicle, please, you know, back off. And why this thought came about, I was actually in my wife's vehicle, and I had to kind of get myself centered and collected. Because I remember I was like, don't let me run into a tree getting out of here, because I could have easily just got in there and floored it. You know what I'm saying? And just run over everything along the way. And I was like, okay, I got to get myself back together. My next goal was to get back to the gate that entered the property and, kind of figure out what's my next move. Um, so that pretty much sums that experience up. And I didn't really care to have any details, or, try to figure any more details out. I knew I was in its place of, or in its space, in its bubble, and I just wanted out of there. And, I felt like I knew exactly what it was uh, at that point in time when it showed up.
I'm wondering maybe if it wasn't the juvenile you saw back in 2019, maybe he was all grown up and ready to say hello, and maybe that he helped draw you back that way.
That's a very good point. Grew up, and, he possibly knew that, what my energy was. And kind of looking back, maybe I should have stayed in place.
There he is.
Oh yeah,
There
hey,
he is right
what do
there.
we got there? Come on.
My son is a jokester for sure.
That's awesome.
I think they're trying to scare me.
Yep.
That's
But
funny.
very good point. I never thought about that, and I've been back to the property several times since then, and I don't think nothing of it. I just you know just go on with my business and roll on. But that's very never actually thought about that because I think paranormal can be the same way once they get accustomed to an energy or they have a reason to connect or have a way. Maybe they know their ability that, hey, this person can sense me on a level. Maybe where other people can't. Maybe that's what was going on. And but being that early in the morning, uh, dark, out there all alone. Actually, I was separated. I don't even think I had my phone on hand. I just had to make the best decision to get out of there, and I think that was for me the right decision. If I would have had somebody else there, we might have tried to hold back a little bit and kind of see where that experience led us. But to me, the value uh, wasn't there because the aggression, just the force of movement coming towards me didn't feel very pleasant. And I think that's what I wanted to separate from that night or early morning.
Has the thought of maybe any kind of skinwalker ever crossed your mind with these things?
You know, that was one thing on the first experience that I had thought of, because I know there's sometimes burial grounds, et cetera, and they may put protection in place or, put a guard up and, keep people off of their sacred ground. Um, so yes, that has been a thought. Uh, I feel that it possibly could be a skinwalker, but what I seen the first, with this first experience, I first referenced it as a dog man, and it wasn't till after that I actually got uh, knowledge of what a skinwalker actually is, and um, I wouldn't rule it out that it could possibly be a skinwalker, um, but I can't 100% say it was one or the other.
That doesn't really matter. I mean, either one is going to be pretty scary.
Yeah, like I said, the first experience pretty pleasant. I thought that was very neat that the horse experienced the same thing that I did, and he was actually the one that alerted me to something over there. There's something there. Hey, maybe we need to take a look at this. I don't know of too many people that can say that. Maybe somebody's dog or something might have had an experience or alerted them, but being horseback like I was the first encounter, um, I really enjoyed that. I didn't have no problem with it at all. I was I don't think there was harm meant by either one of us. And I wish the second scenario was the same. And you think about it, if I didn't have my earplugs in, or maybe the setting was different, maybe that could have been a pleasant experience, or just the factor of it being dark. Like I said, I really don't have a problem with the dark anymore. I remember being deathly scared of the dark when I was a kid, but as I matured into an adult, it doesn't really bother me, and um, but that was a total different experience on the second one.
Do you find carcasses out there, either the feral hogs or cattle or anything?
So feral hogs are relatively new. Like I said, I've been on this property pretty regular for 14 years, and no, not on feral hogs. Those are new, but there were instances where we have baby calves disappear. I have one experience I remember. I had two calves born. Kind of crazy that I can reference this date is back in May, and I actually think the date that I had actually seen the calves on the ground was May 19th. That's when the calves were there. I go on a vacation trip every year the first week or two of June. We actually, my wife and I and kids go to Caddo Lake in East Texas. We go there every June. I mean, I've got it on the books now, and we book with the same people. It's just kind of a regular occurrence. But I remember those calves particularly being there on May 19th, and they were freshly newborn calves. And when I had returned, I think the owner was kind of keeping an eye out while I was gone. And when I had returned, two of those calves, those two particular calves were gone. And the crazy thing about that was, I don't know how you feel about this, but one of the carcasses of those calves ended up across the road in a uh, hay storage lot. And I thought it was very strange that I was actually making a point to look for those calves, because I was like, there's got to be some type of evidence. Somebody had to see it. There's got to be bones somewhere. But this is what's really strange. I don't know why we were moving the hay from that particular area at that point in time. We might have been just cleaning up the lot and, getting ready for a crop or whatever, the hay harvest. But I remember restacking that hay, and right tucked underneath, the bales of hay are round, and right under one edge of that hay, where the edge met the ground, there was a full carcass, bones and everything. Like, it felt like something had dragged it there and actually possibly tucked it under there like a burial. And, most of the time when you have calves that get taken by natural predation or whatever, they don't just leave bone piled up. You got the heads over in one area, you know, the legs are here, the rib cage is over there. They drag that stuff around. They don't just leave it in a pile. And I always thought that was a strange occurrence, that that whole pile of bones was just laid there, tucked underneath that bale of hay in a lot that they'd have no business. I mean, it's across the road. There's not even any cattle over there. There would be no reason for it to be in that particular area. And that occurrence always stuck in my mind, that it could be something else, and, do we, um, do we say, oh, it's the dog man feeding, and, he had what he wanted? Did he tuck that under there as he knew I was actually going to be there at some point in time, that I'd actually cross paths with it? I have no idea, but man, that's a good point. What is their actual intentions? Or, how did that carcass end up tucked underneath that round bale of hay like it did, in pretty much the whole skeletal structure? No meat, no hide, nothing, just the skeletal structure. How did that end up there? And particularly when they're that young, the bone structure is not that developed. They pretty much chew the whole bones and all. Like something just took the flesh and the meat off of it and left the whole carcass. I thought that was very strange of how that happened. And I remember even telling the landowner, it's like, hey, you remember those calves we were missing? I was like, I think I found one, and I never really went into detail about, the whole thing, but I was like, how did that carcass end up where it was at? So yes, through the years, I've had particular instances where, you know, calves just disappear, not necessarily older ones. The only thing that I've had out of character on a full size cow, probably, 1,100-pound animal. There was a uh, cow that come up with a wound. Something had actually, she had a hole in her rib cage on her left hand side, probably about 2 inches in diameter, maybe 3 inches, and you could actually see like her internals. But I remember, like, I ended up having to catch this cow horseback, and to try to diagnose what was going on. And so I had her tied down on the ground, and I was investigating this, and it honestly looked like just a big slug. Something just impacted it, because the bones, each side of the rib cage was shredded. It, and then you could just, the flesh was open, and you could actually see down into her internals. Other than that, you know, I don't know of any other cases on large animals. I mean, that to me looked like a gunshot wound, but to have just one entry point, like it didn't have one on each side or any other areas of concern or trauma. It was just that one spot, like something we could say it was the dog man. Maybe he jumped up on her and bit her. I have no idea. But, you know, putting all the circumstances together and the evidence, I can't rule that out now. I can't definitively say it was one way or the other. But it's very interesting. You know, I deal with livestock every day, and I've actually never really seen a wound like that. Most of the time when, uh, you know, predation happens on livestock, they generally go for the back end. You know, it's basically jump on the back end. Uh, it's easy. The meat's tender back there. Uh, you can rip into it really, really quick and do some damage. So most of the time, it's on the rear end of the livestock when you see something like that happen. Not particularly uh, on the side in the rib cage like that one was. That was a new case, and the cow didn't make it. I doctored her with some antibiotics. She probably made it another 2 weeks, and that was it. You know, she expired. I don't know what fed on her. I think we actually had a burn pit or something at the time. We put her in there and you know, covered her up with some brush at that point. So very interesting things. You know, just us talking, uh, starting to put some of the instances together. You know, all the experiences, and you know, kind of opens my eyes to what else is out there that we don't know, and you know, what's their mannerism, how do they operate, you know, where do they go, where do they come from, you know, all that good stuff. So
I have a question. On the first encounter, did you have a gun with you or
uh,
on you?
no, I did not. I didn't. I probably, you know, if you're asking me would I have shot at it, I probably wouldn't. Like I said, the encounter was pleasant. Like I told you, I kind of uh, the first thought was, you know, I honor your space. You that situation, you know, I probably wouldn't have taken a shot at it. And honestly, the second encounter, I think it would have been beneficial. Oh, did I lose you?
No,
Here,
I
Yeah,
later.
think we're okay though. I think
it froze up a little.
I can edit that out.
Okay.
So here's what I'm thinking though. You had a
Yep.
gun on you didn't have a gun
Um,
with you the first time and you felt safe and okay. On the second encounter you did and you felt very uncomfortable and like you need to get out of there. I'm wondering if they kind of understood that, hey, no gun, no problem. This dude's got a gun out. He's out here tonight. Let's get him out of here.
you know, very good point. I never really thought about that. You know, they had to stand their ground just like, you know, I would stand mine. And I think that's a very, very good point. I never really, you know, never even actually put any thought to that, but you know, it makes sense. Uh, could be.
I don't know if you feel safe enough to go back out to that area or if you can get back to that area and go without a gun. But I'm wondering if you wouldn't have another experience, maybe hopefully a positive one. But when it comes to Dogman, I don't think I'd mess around. I'd have to have a weapon on me. I just don't feel comfortable enough. But maybe it's more than Dogman too. Maybe there's more to it than that, and maybe that's why. Maybe that's why you could hear it coming. Maybe it wanted, it made you hear it coming somehow, some way. Like you said, it was not outside from in your, it was in your head, right?
Yeah, it's like between the earplug and my eardrum. It was like right there. And you know, it felt like it had like a magnetic pull to it, like a magnetic force. You know, it's what the energy kind of felt like. And um, I don't know. It was just a different encounter altogether from what I've experienced with paranormal uh, type stuff, or you know, with this particular case, Dogman. Uh, just a different feeling altogether. So,
Well, Ricky, we appreciate you being here tonight, man. I know that you've got a lot of paranormal stuff, and
Yeah,
we'd
we
like
do.
to get you back on down the road and do another show with you if you'd be willing to do
yeah,
that.
you know, so we were pretty deep into that for a while, and as my son got older, we kind of backed up just a little bit. You know, kind of stepped out of it. But I've always had the thought that you know, one day it's going to be right, and we'll get back involved. But I have no problem talking about some of the stories that we have, and some of them. One in particular that I'm thinking of right now. my son actually called it out, and we had to go back and reference a picture, and it was exactly what he was talking about. And I always thought that was uh, in an old courthouse. It was next to a courthouse. There's no building there that was built in the city right when early development started. There was a bank and an old jail, and this actually happened in the old jail at that
Wow.
particular building. So, there's a lot of interesting stuff. And hold on, baby. Give me like 5 more minutes, okay, baby? Mama needs help. You'll have to get Mama to help her. Catch Mama. Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
That's all right.
Well, again, Ricky, we appreciate you being here tonight. That was great encounters and really interesting
Yeah, it was.
things going on there. I wonder if you might have some more of those coming up.
I'm open to it now. I just hope it wasn't the feeling of the 4 o'clock in the morning one. It's
Right.
I think I actually the thing about it is I found that if you're sometimes when you go looking for something and you push the topic, if I go back out there and stand in the particular area, you may not have that experience. It's almost like when you're least expecting is when this stuff happens. And, when you're prepared for it, nothing, and, but I'm going to welcome back in. I'll probably pull in there one day and just say, hey, if there's something you need to communicate, something you need to show me, let's talk about it. Let's deal with it. Let's see how we can work together on this. Cause I'm very interested now myself. I just don't want to have that 4 o'clock in the morning overwhelming feeling. And, I just don't want to go through that again.
Well,
You
maybe
be
by the
careful
time we
out
get you
there.
back on, you'll have another encounter.
I hope so.
All right, Steve or Ricky. I'm sorry. All right, Ricky, will you be careful out there now, and we'll
Thank
be
you.
in touch.
Thanks again. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. See you.